In today's video, we'll delve into the craziest and most bizarre afterlife theories recorded in history. Number 1. Persian Theory. Unlike the normal belief these days, Persians believe that when you die, your soul doesn't just up and leave immediately. Nope, it hangs around for 3 days before finally making its exit. During those 3 days, your loved ones are busy praying up a storm to make sure your soul doesn't get gobbled up by any evil spirits. And get this, they'd even set up dogs around the body because apparently dogs were like spirit detectors. Their barking was supposed to scare off any unwanted ghosts. But here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't the end of the story until a priest named Zoroaster came along. He claimed he had a vision from Ahura Mazda, a big guy in the sky. According to Zoroaster, every person's soul was given to them by Ahura Mazda with a mission to do good. After you die, your soul hangs around for those 3 days, and then Ahura Mazda shows up to see if you've stuck to the plan or gone off the rails. Once that judgment is done, your soul has to cross a bridge, which leads you to one of 4 afterlife destinations, heaven or hell. And that's where your afterlife adventure really begins. Zoroaster shared this vision with the king and his council, and they were so impressed they decided to convert. That's how Zoroastrianism got its start. All thanks to Zoroaster's divine pitch. Number 2. Celts Theory. Celts had a whole different spin on the afterlife. Forget the usual heaven and hell setup. The Celts believed in a place called the Otherworld. Yep, you heard that right. A whole other world just for afterlife shenanigans. Crazy, huh? But wait, there's more. The Celts figured the Otherworld wasn't too different from our own universe. It's kind of like our world's twin, but with some extra perks, like a VIP lounge where their gods hang out. In this other dimension, you'd be free from all the usual annoyances like sickness and pain. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal, right? But of course, there's a catch. To get into the Otherworld, you had to bring some supplies, food and weapons to be exact. The food was for your everyday afterlife snacking, and the weapons were like your celestial carry-on, keeping you safe in this mystical realm. One of those ancient Greek philosophers, Diodorus Siculus, probably rolling in a celestial hammock right now as I totally butcher his name. He said the Celts believed that souls are immortal and that after a certain number of years, they'd kick off a brand new life in a fresh body. So while you're waiting to shuffle off this mortal coil, your new body is apparently waiting for you in the other world. Talk about planning ahead. If you found that fascinating, just wait for what's coming next. But before we dive into the next theory, hit that bell icon like you're summoning room service and follow us for more fun. Number 3. Egypt Theory. Saying the Egyptians had an interesting take on the afterlife is like calling the pyramids a bit pointy. These folks believe that when you croak, you don't just rest in peace. You set off on a grand journey to a place called the Field of Reeds. To them, the afterlife was more of a mandatory road trip everyone had to take. So to help out their dearly departed, they'd plaster the walls of tombs with spells and drawings. It's like leaving sticky notes all over the house to remind you where you're headed next. Only these notes were all about navigating the afterlife. According to their belief, once you've left your earthly body behind, your soul checks into the Hall of Truth, where you stand before a panel of gods and judges for your negative confession. It's like a cosmic court where you confess all the bad stuff you didn't do. After that, it's weighing time. Your heart gets placed on a scale against the feather of truth. If your heart's lighter than the feather, congrats, you're off to paradise. If not, well, let's just say Amit, the soul-devouring beastie, is ready for her next meal. This whole setup was the ultimate goal for every ancient Egyptian, living a life so good that it's worth living forever. Number 4. Greek Theory. The Greeks, always ahead of the game when it comes to deep thinking, came up with a belief that's both touching and a bit bizarre. They figured that you can keep a loved one alive simply by remembering them. Sweet, right? But here's the kicker. Your afterlife destination depends on how well your loved ones keep your memory alive. According to this theory, if your family and friends remember you fondly, you're in luck. You're probably headed for a pretty sweet afterlife. But if you're forgotten, well, and you're stuck wandering the darkest corners of the underworld like you're trying to find your way out of a never-ending haunted house. Seriously, is that even normal? This whole idea reportedly comes from the one and only Plato around the 4th century BCE. But honestly, it feels ancient even by ancient standards. It's a bit of a bummer though. Your afterlife fate doesn't just depend on how good you were, but also on how well you're remembered. So better make sure you're unforgettable, or you might end up in the cosmic lost and found. Number 5, Viking Theory. On this chilly side of the continent, where countries like Norway and Sweden reign supreme, they've got some of the wildest afterlife theories you've ever heard. Forget the whole good people go to heaven, bad people go to hell routine. Over here, where you end up in the afterlife depends on how you checked out. If you died in battle or got caught up in a war, congrats! You've scored a one-way ticket to Valhalla, the ultimate VIP lounge for warriors. It's like an eternal after-party where you get to hang out with the king of the gods himself, Odin. Until, get this, he dies. But who's even keeping track of Odin's expiration date? But if you meet your end at sea, don't worry, there's a special spot for you too. Welcome to the underwater home of the giantess Aran. It's like an exclusive underwater club, but instead of a bouncer, you've got a giantess deciding who gets in. So, while most of the world is obsessed with morality-based afterlives, the folks here are all about how you went out. And honestly, that's one way to keep things interesting. Number 6, Masen Theory. The Masen people are right up there in the Hall of Fame for bizarre afterlife theories. They've got this idea that the afterlife is a 3-story affair: the upper world, the middle world, and the underworld. So here's the breakdown. The upper world is basically the sky. Think of it as the celestial penthouse suite. The middle world is where we're all hanging out right now. And the underworld, well, that's tucked away under the sea, like an exclusive underwater hideout. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Because of this belief, they don't just bury their dead anywhere. Nope, they go all in and bury them in sinkholes and swamps, just to make sure they've got their bases covered. So if you're wandering around Masen territory and stumble upon a random swamp, don't be surprised if it's got some spiritual significance. And that's not even the strangest part. It's so common in the country that finding a Masen person who believes otherwise is like finding a needle in a haystack. Only the haystack's in the underworld. But don't go anywhere, because we've got more wild theories coming up next. Number 7, Chinese Theory. This video wouldn't be complete without discussing how Chinese weird beliefs favor the afterlife. According to these beliefs, the Chinese soul is 2-part system, like yin and yang, kind of like a spiritual combo meal. The yin part of your soul sticks around in your body after death, while the yang part says, see ya, and heads off to the afterlife. Now here's where things get interesting. Much like other beliefs, the soul of the dearly departed gets summoned to a godly court, where its deeds are checked, and it's decided whether they've been naughty or nice. If you've been righteous, you're presented with a choice: cross a gold bridge or a silver bridge. But don't worry, this isn't some ancient version of, let's make a deal. If you pick the gold bridge, congratulations. You're headed to the pure land of the West, where your soul gets to glide through the cosmos until it finds its ultimate chill spot. Choose the silver bridge, and you're in for a rebirth as a god. So it's like a win-win for the righteous, really. But if you've been bad, well, things take a turn. You're hauled off to meet the 10 magistrates of hell, where they've got the list of all the wrongs you've done, and they're ready to dish out some serious punishment. After a time in hell, some souls even get reincarnated, which is like getting sent back to the start of the game for another try. Number 8, Hun Theory. This sect had a pretty out there belief about the afterlife. They thought that living a super righteous life would keep your spirit as balanced as a perfectly brewed cup of tea. They also had a 3-world setup: the underworld, the celestial world, and the tree of the world, which is basically the cosmic Wi-Fi router connecting both realms. But hold on to your hat, because here's where it gets really wild. They believed that you could actually live in both worlds at once. Yeah, you heard that right. For instance, their shaman had this extraordinary skill. They could pull your dying soul back from the underworld and give you a second shot at life. But if the shaman flubbed it, well, that's a one-way ticket to the great beyond for you. It's like the ultimate high-stakes game of life and death. Number 9. Samarian Theory. These are the people who have no belief in either heaven or hell, nor do they believe that a person goes somewhere after they die. Atheists would probably be grinning from here to here right now. Sumerian believes that people of the underworld are living like those in the normal world and are just normal people who try as much as possible to survive, just as we are striving to survive. However, they believe that the only gift they can get from the people of the underworld is bitterness. So their dead depended on the living offering and sacrifices for food, and on the other hand, they got protection from their dead. If they fail to keep their end of the bargain, their dead come back to Earth as what we call eatem, or ghost, and torments them, forces them to have bad hallucinations, and even possesses them. And last one for today, number 10, Roman Theory. The Romans have quite the dramatic setup. Their afterlife theory is like a blockbuster funeral event, all the bells and whistles. According to Roman beliefs, the whole shebang starts with an epic funeral. This is their golden ticket for the soul to make it across the afterlife. During the funeral, the family and friends go into full-on isolation mode. Think of it as a VIP room, but for mourning. They're hunkered down in a room, praying for the dearly departed and making sure not to say anything bad about them, because the soul is still hanging around. Talk about keeping things positive. Now here's where it gets really wild. To make sure their loved ones safely cross over, they're required to create a cacophony of mourning sounds. Yes, you heard that right. More noise than a rock concert. But if you're not exactly a fan of loud wailing, no worries. The Romans had a clever trick up their togas. They hired professional mourners. That's right, people whose job was to cry on cue. So you could just sit back, relax, and let the pros handle the drama. There are more and more bizarre and crazy afterlife theories in human history that have been followed for several years. But let's hear from you. Which one do you think is the craziest? Remember to subscribe and click on the bell icon for more of our incoming videos.